Good day, this is Jason with LMGI. Today we're going to look at optimizing a foreign body. I have a part here that is of origins unknown. It was imported and we're going to make a mold out of it. So we need really nice geometry. We don't want any tiny slivers. We don't want any imperfections. So there's a great command you can use to, first of all, if you wanted to make a copy of the body, you could possibly extract this. As it says, it creates a copy, and you could have it hide the original. I'll pick that. This would give you a way to reference the original geometry if you wanted to. And now we're going to use Optimize Face. Software's got an interesting button called Find Interesting Faces. Faces that are likely in need of optimization. This could potentially save you a little bit of time in only optimizing the interesting faces, but it's really pretty performant to just select everything. I'll even turn on, you can see by emphasizing the faces, you can see some areas that the software has found suspect. There's a pretty good, maybe a pretty good little example there. And we'll just go ahead and hit OK. This does warn us that if there are any parameters, it essentially turns it into a kind of an unparameterized body at that point, because it does have to kind of maybe destroy some faces and rebuild potentially. I'm going to let this run real time. I thought I might pause it, but it is kind of, you might as well have a sense for how long it actually takes. And if we kind of parse this, so B-spline surfaces, so there's one less B-spline surface, and it actually, there's one more cylinder. So that's the idea. It finds errors, and in some cases it can actually replace something that is probably extremely close to being a cylinder within that tolerance that you provided. And a cylinder, of course, is much more usable for many type of operations like machining, things like that. So that's that. We're also going to take a look today at, I'll make a new model, and we're going to take a look at the wave linker. And I'm just going to make, I guess we can just leave the default. Maybe I'll put this in temp. Just make myself a new empty part. And then I'll bring in a component. So this, the wave linker would be used where you have subcomponents. So there's a wrench. Let's bring that in. It looks pretty good. We'll just say OK. It's asking me if I want to fix that constraint and make it grounded. So if we see, we look at our assembly navigator, we have a component, but if we look at our part navigator, there is no geometry directly in this file. So if I wanted to make my own edits to this, but I didn't want to modify the original wrench, for example, that wrench may be released, but I need to machine it, and I want to change something that makes it easier for me to machine it. That's where the wave geometry linker shines. So you can select, it may default to composite curve, so just switch that to body. You can have it hide the original if you want. I think that all looks pretty good. I'll just pick this middle mouse to accept. So you see now we have a body in the part navigator. So I'll go and hide the underlying component. And if you see when you hover it, we're actually dealing with a linked body here. So now you'd be able to do things with the synchronous modeling, like defeaturing, for example, if I needed to make that a sharp corner or something like that, or maybe even, let's see, maybe resize a blend. It's a pretty common one for manufacturing. On an internal radius, sometimes it's nicer to, have a ball mill that's a little bit smaller than the radius in a corner, or maybe if it's a plastic mold, from your knowledge of mold making that if that radius is a little bit within part specs, of course, but so you can make modifications to that model on top of the original design component. So I guess I could go ahead and save that. I'll save that into temp. Then certainly if we modified the original part, those updates would cascade into my assembly. I don't know what we might want to change here. Make this 25. It's all kind of crooked now. That's okay. We'll just do it anyway. And we'll save that. It's probably barely obvious. Okay, so I've gone and opened that part up again, and I've changed this blend to be much smaller. I'll do it again. So we'll make this 1. So this is just an example of changing the original part. I guess I could poke a hole. It might be pretty obvious. Kind of sloppy here, but I think that probably looks good. Hopefully that won't be too big of a hole. It's a pretty big a hole. And okay, so I poked a hole in my part, and I'll just close this. And now if we go back to the original, there's our original part. It's got the hole, it's got the small radius, but yet it doesn't have that radius, and this is still being resized as we wanted. So there you go, a little optimized face and wave geometry linker.